June 1984, in a secret facility in Kamchatka, in the Soviet Union, scientists try to force open a gate to the Upside Down. The experiment fails, and Hitman Grigory kills one of the scientists on orders from his boss, Stepanov, who gives Dr. Alexei and the team one more year to succeed. 1 year later in Hawkins during Season 3, the kids are trying to put their crazy past behind them and live like normal teenagers. A new mall called Starcourt has opened, which pulls business away from local shops and causes tension in the town. Dustin comes home from summer camp with a new long-distance girlfriend named Susie, but his friends think she isn't real. He builds a radio tower to contact her, but the others ditch him. Max and Lucas are in an off-again relationship, while Mike and Eleven start dating, much to Hopper's annoyance. Hopper becomes an overprotective father and threatens Mike to stop seeing Eleven, which puts a strain on their relationship and eventually leads Eleven to break up with Mike. Steve is unsure what to do with his life, so he takes a job at the Scoops Ahoy ice cream shop in the mall, where he becomes friends and flirts with his new coworker, Robin. Jonathan and Nancy both get internships at the Hawkins Post, and Hopper starts to develop romantic feelings for Joyce, though she turns down his advances. When Dustin tries to call Susie over the radio, he accidentally picks up a mysterious Russian transmission instead. At Scoops Ahoy, he reunites with Steve, who now works there, and Robin becomes curious about what they're doing and helps translate the Russian message. The three discover it's a coded message, and with Lucas's younger sister Erica they decode it, realizing the Russians are secretly unloading strange shipments at Starcourt Mall at night. The group follows the clues and finds a hidden freight elevator that drops them into a Soviet base under Starcourt. Deeper below the mall, they discover a large Russian lab and hide from soldiers patrolling the area. There, they find Russian scientists trying to reopen a portal to the Upside Down using a powerful machine. Steve and Robin are eventually caught, drugged, and interrogated by the Russians, but Dustin and Erica manage to free them and escape. Meanwhile, Max and Eleven grow closer as friends and hang out at Starcourt to distract themselves from Mike and Lucas. Eleven breaks up with Mike after learning he lied to her about Hopper's threat, and then uses her powers to spy on Mike and see what he's saying about her. Will argues with Lucas and Mike because they no longer want to play Dungeons and Dragons and storms off to Castle Byers to be alone. Mike and Lucas later find him, and Will reveals that he can still feel the Mind Flayer, meaning it is still alive. At the same time, Joyce notices that magnets at her home and workplace are suddenly losing their magnetism. While investigating this, she accidentally stands Hopper up for a date. Joyce convinces Hopper that the demagnetization is connected to something strange happening again, likely tied to the old Hawkins lab. When they investigate the abandoned lab, Hopper is attacked and beaten by Grigory, the Russian operative from Kamchatka. Hopper and Joyce then confront corrupt town mayor Larry Klein and force him to admit he helped Russians secretly buy properties across Hawkins, including the new mall, for unknown but clearly dangerous purposes. They search one of these Soviet-owned properties and discover a hidden underground laboratory. Grigory arrives to kill them, but they narrowly escape with a hostage, Dr. Alexei, the Russian scientist. Since Alexei doesn't speak English, they take him to conspiracy theorist Murray Bauman so he can translate. Hopper and Joyce keep Alexei under guard and pressure him to explain what the Russians are doing. He reveals that they are trying to open a new gate to the Upside Down through a portal located beneath Starcourt Mall. Hopper tries to reach Dr. Owens with this information, but Joyce insists they head straight back to Hawkins, worried that their kids may already be involved. At the Hawkins Independence Day Fair, Grigory corners Mayor Klein and demands he work harder to help find Hopper. Later, Grigory tracks down Alexei at the fair and kills him for betraying the Russians. Meanwhile, Nancy and Jonathan, still working as interns at the Hawkins Post, investigate the home of Doris Driscoll, an elderly woman who complains about rabid rats eating her fertilizer. They find reports of missing fertilizer and strange rat behavior across town, and then discover Mrs. Driscoll herself frantically eating fertilizer in her kitchen. Their boss Tom Holloway, who is Heather's father, fires Nancy and Jonathan for harassing Mrs. Driscoll. Nancy later visits Mrs. Driscoll at the hospital because she's still suspicious and watches her become possessed by the Mind Flayer. Max's older stepbrother Billy is also under the Mind Flayer's control. At the same time, rats gather at an abandoned mill called Brimborn Steelworks, where they explode into a disgusting organic mass that becomes part of the Mind Flayer's new physical form. Guided by this creature, Billy kidnaps his co-worker Heather Holloway and brings her to the mill so she can be taken. Is under the Mind Flayer's control, but he breaks free and almost kills them before Eleven steps in and defeats him temporarily. Billy returns to the mill, where dozens of townspeople have now been possessed and merged into the Mind Flayer's growing monster. Eleven uses her powers to try to communicate with Billy's mind, where she learns about his painful childhood and trauma while battling the Mind Flayer's influence at the mill. However, Billy senses her presence, giving the Mind Flayer the exact location of Eleven and her friends. Billy, speaking under the Mind Flayer's control, reveals that the creature plans to kill Eleven to get revenge for her closing the original portal. The flayed people of Hawkins converge on the mill and are absorbed into the Mind Flayer's massive proxy body. The creature finally bursts through the roof of Brimborn Steelworks and begins hunting Eleven and her friends. It attacks their group and badly injures Eleven's leg. The kids then team up with Nancy and Jonathan to figure out how to stop it. They theorize that Billy, Mrs. Driscoll, and others are flayed, meaning possessed by the Mind Flayer. The group decides to visit Mrs. Driscoll at the hospital to learn more, but when they get there, Nancy finds that she is missing from her bed. Nancy and Jonathan are soon attacked in the hospital by Tom and Bruce, both controlled by the Mind Flayer. Realizing they are possessed, Nancy and Jonathan fight back and manage to kill them. Their bodies then melt and combine into a single horrifying organic mass, forming a new monster. 11 arrives and uses her powers to drive the monster away. It flees back to the steel mill and joins the larger Mind Flayer creature. Afterward, the group breaks into a supermarket to treat 11's wound and gather supplies and weapons. Dustin and Erica, meanwhile, hide the heavily drugged Steve and Robin in the Starcourt movie theater so they can recover from the drugs. Dustin contacts 11's group on the walkie-talkie to explain what happened in the Russian base, but his battery dies before he can finish. Using psychic projection, 11 locates Dustin, and the group heads to the mall. At the mall, they fight to rescue Steve, Robin, Dustin, and Erica. 11 takes down the Russian soldiers, but collapses from exhaustion and the injury caused by the Mind Flayer. She discovers that a piece of the Mind Flayer's flesh has been embedded in her leg, and when they pull it out, she suddenly loses all her powers. Hopper, Joyce, and Murray arrive at Starcourt to save the kids and destroy the Russian machine that is opening a new portal to the Upside Down. As plans are made to get 11 and the others to safety, Hopper, Joyce, and Murray head down into the base toward the machine, with Dustin and Erica guiding them by radio from Dustin's hilltop tower. Billy and the Mind Flayer trap 11's group inside the mall. The others attack the Mind Flayer using fireworks as makeshift explosives, while 11 reaches the possessed Billy emotionally by reminding him of his happiest memory with his late mother, which he saw earlier inside his mind. Billy realizes the horrible things he has done under the creature's control and sacrifices himself, letting the Mind Flayer kill him instead of Max and her friends. Deep in the Russian lab, Hopper, Joyce, and Murray race to the machine room, still guided by Dustin over the radio. To stop the machine, they need to open a safe containing the shutdown keys, but the combination is the precise value of Planck's constant from quantum mechanics. Dustin knows who can help and calls his camp girlfriend Susie, a gifted science student. Susie, not realizing how serious the situation is, insists that Dustin first sing her favorite song, the theme from The Neverending Story, as a duet. After he sings with her, Susie finally gives Dustin the correct number, allowing Hopper and Joyce to open the safe and grab the keys they need. Just then, Grigori appears and attacks Hopper. During the struggle, Hopper kills Grigori by throwing him into the machine's energy beam, which damages the system and leaves Hopper trapped on the wrong side of the platform. With time running out and no safe way for Hopper to escape, he gives Joyce a final look, signaling her to turn the keys and destroy the machine anyway. A heartbroken Joyce turns the key, triggering a huge explosion that closes the gate and appears to vaporize Hopper in the blast. With the portal to the Upside Down sealed, the Mind Flayer's body at the mall collapses into a dead heap. Joyce is forced to accept that Hopper seems to have been disintegrated in the process. 3 months later, Starcourt Mall is a burned-out ruin. The official story blames a tragic fire, and the deaths are quietly covered up as part of the disaster. The corrupt Mayor Klein is arrested for his role in helping the Russians. The Byers family decide to leave Hawkins for good and take in a powerless 11, who has still not regained her abilities. Mike and 11 reaffirm their love for each other before she leaves and promise to see each other again at Thanksgiving. Meanwhile, in Kamchatka, Russian guards in a remote prison are told to feed a prisoner to a captured Demogorgon, but are ordered specifically not to use the American. It is revealed that Hopper is actually alive and being held prisoner there, as his captors continue experiments involving the Upside Down and its deadly creatures.